So we're looking at learning outcome 4 for managing resources in health and social care. Now, this section is about financial resources. So it's understand the management of financial resources. So when you get into the management area, you will be looking at budgets and finances and, trying to split things up to be able to afford certain things or resources. So that's what all this is about. So 4.1 is explain the principles of budget management. 4.2, analyze the systems used to manage finances in health and social care. 4.3, explain the sources of funds available. And then 4.4, analyze factors affecting funding allocation. So let's find the right one, which is this one. So when we're talking about 4.1, explain the principles of budget management, we just want to know what is budget management. Now, budget management is it's a process of where you've got a certain amount of money, and then you've got to manage it, you've got to track it, you've got to see what your income is, how much money you've got to see what your expenses are, and then you just got to try and manage that to cover a certain period of time. So you might get a budget, for example, that will cover you for 6 months. So you've got to make sure that that amount of money lasts the whole 6 months. So it could be for things like staff pay, it could be for getting new equipment or new resources, medication and all that. So that's what you've got to be doing. Now, companies, and I say companies because any sort of setting that you're in with healthcare, they're still a business. Now, companies have budgets for different departments, as well as having a budget for the overall company as well. Now, what happens is that the overheads, your company bosses will decide how much budget your department is going to get, or your care home is going to get, and say to the manager of there that this is your set amount of money, you're responsible for managing this money, and you're going to set the budget, you're going to set out how much you spend, what sort of resources you get, but you've got to stick to it. So the importance of budget management. Now, budgets actually tell you how much money you need to carry out the activities, because you'll have, within your managerial role, you'll have set down targets. You'll know exactly how much pay you've got to give your staff. You'll know if you ever need to do overtime, if you need anybody coming in last minute. You'll know what sort of resources or activities you're going to be doing. So you'll have set a budget. Now, having a budget helps you to monitor your income and how much you're actually spending. And again, it sets the basis for financial accountability, and it helps you to be transparent. So it shows that, I have this much money, I'm financially able to say that I can be accountable because it's gone on this, that, and the other. You've got the receipts, you've got the all the data and information put down. So it's a nice paper trail there for you. Now, budgeting principles. Now, these are some principles that will help when you're budgeting. And I quite like these principles because a lot of the things can be translated onto your personal life as well to help you budget in a normal way. So for budgeting principles, try and be conservative, not optimistic. So to try and make sure that you're building in a safety factor, don't underestimate how much something will cost, always overestimate it. For example, if on a normal day basis, if you're going shopping and you need a few items of clothing and a pair of trainers, if you say, right, I expect I'm going to spend 200 quid today, you overestimate by quite a bit. So I've got that £200. I can actually go and spend it on this. But you might come back and you might have only spent £110 on all these items for yourself. I mean, that's quite unrealistic, to be honest, depending on where you go. But, then you'll be like, oh, I've actually got this £90 left over. So it works in the same way as if you're building, working within a managerial position. Then you've got teamwork and consultation. So any type of budgeting should actually be split up among the, say, the leadership team, the team that is in charge of their own little departments or their own little areas, so that every individual knows that I've got this much money to spend, and then they'll be able to set it and be able to come to reasonable expenditures. Again, allow plenty of time. So when you think about budgeting, sometimes you think, oh, okay, I'm going to spend 10 minutes, I'm going to decide what I'm going to do with my money, and that's it. But it's not going to be 10-minute work or a few hours work. A really good budget will take you weeks. And remember, we're talking about it on a management position where you're actually building an organization, not on the personal level. Documentation, so make sure that you've got everything documented and make sure that they're clear and they can be understood by anyone. So if you were to make some documents about budgets and you've labeled it properly and you've got everything on it saying this is what we're spending on, this is how much money we're going to be doing and so on. If I was to come along and have a look at it, I should be able to understand it. Because if they're unclear or they're not labeled, even you yourself, when time passes, say a week goes by, you'll be like, oh, what was this £40 for? What was this 3,200 for? I can't remember, because we forget things. So it's nice to make sure everything is nice and clear and labeled. And again, if you're going to be allocating the budget between a few members of staff and saying that we're all going to work on this, make sure that they've got training. Now, training doesn't mean that you're going to sit for hours and hours with them every single day for 3 weeks and teach them bit by bit how to budget. Training can just be happening in a single meeting, because if they've gotten to the position that they're in, they'll have some common sense. They'll know exactly what to do. Just need a little bit of guidance. So give them a meeting, explain to them what sort of budgeting things you do, what sort of criteria you use, explain how you document things, and then give them the basic knowledge, and then they'll be able to go off and be more confident as well. So are you okay on this principle section, Lee?
Yeah, it's just common sense, and it just...
Yeah, exactly. And then again, at the end, make sure, now it says get a sign off. It just means make sure that every person who has agreed to the budget, so if you've worked, you're the main person there and you've given your 3 members of staff who are in the leadership team with you a budget and says, right, make sure that every single person who worked on that budget signs it off, so that later on, when it comes to you actually allocating the money and giving it out and buying the things or ordering stuff, I can't come and say to you, hey, Lee, I've got no clue what this was about. I didn't agree to this. So, no one can have an argument later, because you can turn around and say, actually, you signed off on this. We all agreed together. So it's just covering your own back in a way. Then we go on to cost-benefit analysis. Now, this can be known as CBA, or it can sometimes be called as benefit cost analysis. It's all the same thing. And this is just an approach to where you estimate the strengths and weaknesses of what sort of alternative options you might have. So you might look at, okay, I want to get this thing here, but I can't afford that. It's not in my budget. What else can I do that's similar? So you're looking at how good it is, what's the strength of it, what's the weakness of it, and it should help you to save money as well. Now, a CBA can be used to compare, complete, or any potential courses of action. So you're going to be looking at any courses of action that you've actually completed or you're looking to. And then it can be there to estimate the value of the cost of a decision. So you might have decided to go for something that's a bit more expensive. So you're going to evaluate it, or you're going to estimate and see what is the difference between this. And again, this is commonly used in commercial transactions, like in business or policy decisions, or in project investments. So it'll be more on a larger scale that you'd be using this. And then what's the difference between fixed costs and variable costs? Now, in accounting, fixed costs they're just those expenses that will stay the same. Like if you've got a rent that you're going to pay, or if you've got staff costs, you've got 10 members of staff and they do this many hours each. If they're not changing their hours, if you're not getting them to do more work, that's going to be a fixed cost. Your gas and electric might be a fixed cost because you've got an estimate of how much you use on a monthly basis. Now, a variable cost is an expense that will change over time. So these are things that will fluctuate up and down. Like a mortgage or the rent will stay the same, but this variable cost might be 1 month you need to order more dinners in, or you've got more residents, so you're getting more electrical and gas output, so your gas and electric is changing. So that's fixed is something that will stay the same and variable is something that will change. So to summarize, fixed costs do not change. They don't increase or decrease, but a variable cost will change depending on what the situation is. Then you've got auditing expenditure. Now you've got, this is just where you're actually checking how much money you're spending. So expense auditing is like a risk management task, and it's quite critical to make sure that you do this so that you can maintain profit within your company. So when you're looking at expenses, these expenses will reduce your revenue and reduce your overall profit that you're going to make. So when you're doing any audit procedures, this will help you to preserve your bottom line, because you're checking, am I spending the money on the right place? What is my highest cost? What is my lowest cost? How can I keep this at a good basis? So it just helps you to sort of, in a way, reflect on where your money is going as well. Normally, this task will be done with accountants if you've got one within your company, and they'll do the auditing for you and tell you what's getting too much money spent on it, and maybe you can cut back and use a different service instead. Excuse me. Then you got budget profiling, and like I said, it is completely full of so many terminologies for finances in this unit, in this particular learning outcome. So budget profiling, it just where you're looking at your annual budget, you're looking at the activities that you're going to be doing through the year, and then you're just seeing what's going on with all of these. So budget holders will control their budgets on an annual basis, and they're going to focus on what they're spending and to make sure that it tries to come in within that budget overall in total. So you might go over 1 month on your budget, but you want to make sure that throughout the whole year that you stay within that yearly fixed basis. And then you've got, for the last section on this one, you're involving members of staff in managing a budget. Now, just imagine you've got 10 members of staff. Now, you're doing care for someone where you're changing bandages or you're using a lot of medical resources. So you might have one member of staff who's constantly ripping open bandages and maybe dropping them on the floor, or just saying, oh, this one's no good, or instead of using one, I'll use two, make sure that's even more secure. But depending on how much stuff they use, it's going to cost you money. So sometimes when we think of, oh, we're opening a box of plasters or a new box of bandages, it's only a couple of pounds, but those pounds will add up. So if you involve your members of staff in your budget management, it's quite beneficial because it gives them a perspective of how much things cost and how to look after things and use them. And again, it helps you to discuss matters in relating costs. Because if you're just going across them and saying, hey, that costs this much money, stop doing that, they're going to be like, oh, what a snob. But if you're actually involving them and saying that if we do this, we can have a better profit at the end of the year, then we might even be able to get bonuses and treats that we can all go out to. When you involve staff as well, you can actually help to train the staff in budget management, and it's a step up for them as well, because for future roles or for future development, they'll be able to know this is how it works and get a good foot into it. So that's 4.1. Are you okay with this, Lee?
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah.
Let's go on to 4.2. So analyze the systems used to manage finances in health and social care. So when you're analyzing systems on here, you're looking at costings. So the costing is an approach to, just checking what the overall costs are with carrying out a business. So what's your gas, electric, what's your rent, how much is it going to cost to get the items or the services you want to provide, and how much are you going to pay your staff? And those are just basic things that you're looking at. You might want to do advertising, and any of those type of things. So costing is one of those tools that managers use to just check what sort of expenses they have and how much it will be. And then they've got principles to costing as well, and you can use a plan to do these principles and, check any changes within it as well. So the role of costing in a business or organization actually includes inventory. Oh my goodness, inventory. I was trying to say inventory and valuation together then. So inventory valuation, cost recording, product or services pricing, and decision making. And there are some considerations that you'll want to look at when you're looking for managing your finances. So you've got stakeholder engagement. So a stakeholder, this is a word that when I first heard it, I was very thrown off. I was like, what on earth is a stakeholder? That sounds really important. But a stakeholder is anybody that has interest in that business. So it's staff, it's management, it's the local authority, it's the service users, it's the people that will come and do deliveries for you, it's your patients, family members. So anybody that's got an interest or actually uses those services is a stakeholder. Then you're going to be creating and developing incentive plans. So to make sure that you don't get carelessness within your staff members and you're not getting things wasted, or they're not wasting a lot of time doing tasks for half an hour that could really take them 10 minutes. You try and give them incentives and say, right, if you guys meet your targets, if you're able to do this, that, and the other, you're going to get a bonus at the end, or you're going to get vouchers, high street vouchers, which you can go and spend. So it's nice to have incentive plans in place just to help your employees with their job behavior and their performance as well. It'll help to motivate them, and they will want to work better and faster. I've had in my past, when I used to work in a photography shop, Jessup's, for 5 years when I was in my teens. And we used to have these offers where they'd give us high street vouchers. And at that time, I was only working 4 or 5 hours a week, £20 for my whole shift. So I'd get £20 a week out of it in my olden days. But when I got offered those high street vouchers, the amount of selling I did, because I was getting like triple what I was earning in a week at the end of the month. And it was that extra money that you can go out and you can go and spend on things that you want. So it really does motivate you. And for myself, it did when I was younger. Then you've got data accuracy. So you've got to make sure that you put down precise costs and that you calculate it using the correct data so that it's accurate, because it really does make a difference on your figures if they're not accurate. So you're going to be putting data such as and this is just a very basic thing that I've written on here. So when you've got service user level costing, so what is your cost for admissions, your cost of your length of stay or your care plan? And then you've got your staff activity data. So what is it costing you for the time that they spend on different services for different care for service users? What time is it costing you for them to be a carer, CPD, and so on? Then you've got transparency. So you've got to make sure, again, like we said earlier, it's very important to document your work clearly so that it's transparent. So anybody that comes up that needs to see your paperwork can actually identify exactly what you've written without having to come and waste your time and say, hey, Lee, what does this mean? Can you explain that? And then you might have forgotten as well because it's been so long since you did it. Then you have bank and cash control. So you might have noticed at the centre that you're in, they'll have something called a petty cash box, where if you've gone out and they ask you, hey, go and get us a bottle of milk, will you, and bring it back, they'll give you a couple of quid. You'll give them a receipt when you come back. So you have like a box, maybe 20 or 30 or 50 pounds, where you got petty cash for the daily things that come up. But you've got to make sure that this is done properly, that anything that is spent actually has a receipt, so that you can account for this £2.50 that you spent there, the 73p that you spent there. So you know that in total, even if you physically not got £50 in your box, when you add up all your money and all your receipts, it should total £50. And the last section on this one is internal control and auditing. Now, we talked about auditing before, but what we're going to do is you're just going to, internal auditing just means to provide independent assurance to management that you've looked at all your risk managements, you've looked at the governance, you've looked at your processes, and that you've checked, right, I am operating correctly and I am going down the right route. So you're just carrying out a review really of what you're spending and how you're doing it. So that's 4.2. Are you okay with this one?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Let's go into 4.3. So 4.3 is explain the sources of funds available. So what are the sources of funding on here? Now, when you're a company, you're always looking to seek new funding. You want to grow your business, you want to get financing, you want something that will contribute some resources to your company or to your project or your program. So you can get funding on short-term or long-term purposes as well. Now, the different sources of funding include retained earnings, debt capital, and equity capital, and I'll go through those. So the main sources of funding are retained earnings, so net income. So it's the income that you're, do you know when you come out of not a profit, at the end of the year, you've got a business, you've got a certain amount of money that you've earned, and instead of taking it and saying, oh, I've earned this £6,000 and I'm going to go and enjoy this, you're going to put that money back into your business. So that's what I mean by retained earnings. Then you've got debt capital and equity capital. So companies use retained earnings from their business operations to expand or distribute their dividends between their shareholders. They also raise funds by borrowing debt privately. So they might get a loan from the bank or something like that. And then they also get equity funding by exchanging ownership rights for cash. So, example, if you've got a business, you must have watched Dragon Den, where somebody will say, I've got this great idea, I've got this business, and I'm selling 30% of my business. So you could sell a portion of your business to get money out of it. So you're exchanging. So, for example, I could buy 30% and I'd be have a bit of ownership within your company. So retained earnings, just to go into a bit more detail. So these are just there, like I said, that's that money that you've got left over that it might have been a profit and you're putting back into your business. So after you've got your profits, companies normally decide what they're going to do with this money. So, and they allocate it efficiently. So they might be to get more services, to be able to get more staff. It really depends on what you need it for. In a basic level, it might just be to restock a certain item. So if you're a shop and if you're selling iPads, you might just want to go and restock those iPads and say, this is what I'm putting my money on. Or you can decide to invest in something new completely. You can open a new shop or open a new a care home and say, this is what I'm putting my money in so I can get double the expenses out. Debt capital is, again, where you're just getting financing through private bank loans, and it's just to get a set amount of money that you can secure against your premises or between things and say that I've got this here. I might get a mortgage, I might get a fixed loan, I might get one of those things, but it's just a loan that you're getting. Now, companies do need to go into debt sometimes. so that they can get more fundings to be able to do certain activities. And unfortunately, it can be inevitable that you will need to borrow money as a company. Now, the drawback of borrowing money through debt is that the borrowers need to make interest payments as well as their, capital repayments as well. So you're paying quite a lot back on that money. Equity capital. Now, sometimes companies can raise funds through equity. Like I said, if they want to sell a share within their company, or if they want to just split up and say, right, I can't do this on my own, I need somebody to come in to give me 50% of this. So that's how they'll be getting money out of there. And then other funding sources. Now, funding sources also include private equity, venture capital, donations, grants, subsidies, and they don't have a direct requirement for any return on their investments. That's ROI, return on investment. So unless they're doing private equity and venture capital. They can also do crowdfunding or soft funding. So you might have seen on the internet where a company saying, we're creating this new design. I remember there was a particular pram that one company was trying to create, which was meant to be really innovative and stuff, and they were trying to do crowdfunding so people would give them money so they can actually go ahead and do it. And crowdfunding normally happens online because they can reach a bigger area. So that's 4.3. Are you okay on this?
Yeah, it's the title, so it says it all, the source. What I just said, it's the beginning, it's the start of something, it's where something comes from. So when you're talking of the source of funds, where did the funds come from and what's available for you in order to access them funds?
Exactly. And then the last one on this is 4.4, analyze factors affecting funding allocation. Now, you've got a lot of different factors on here, and we're going to talk about capital expenditure. Now, a capital expenditure is the money an organization actually spends to buy, maintain, or improve its fixed assets. So their fixed assets are things like their buildings. If they're a trucking yard, they'll have their trucks, their equipment, or even the land that they run. Now, it's considered a capital expenditure when the asset is newly purchased or when the money is used towards extending the useful life of an existing asset. So it's capital expenditure if you buy a new building, a new vehicle, a new piece of equipment, or it's also capital expenditure if you spend that money towards fixing what you've already got, like fixing the engines of your trucks, or fixing and maintenance of your equipment, or like it says here, putting in a new roof or new windows. Then you've got revenue expenditures. Now, revenue expenditures are costs and expenses associated with the operational costs of a business. So this is what happens on a day-to-day basis, how much it costs you to run that business. And these are expensed during the accounting period that they were incurred. So you might have heard of the accounting period where everyone's rushing around trying to do their taxes from April to April. So normally that is the general accounting period. But sometimes some companies, depending on when they formed, they'll have a different type of accounting period. So this revenue expenditure actually allows businesses to link their earned revenue with expenses occurred, during the same period. So what they can say is, I've earned 20,000, but I've actually spent 17,000 of that doing things up. So they're not going to get taxed for that 17 grand because it's already been gone back into their business, hasn't it? And then the last section on here is examples of costs. So you've got hire purchase, leases and loans. So a hire purchase or leasing it's just a type of finance that allows firms to possess and control an asset during an agreed term. So as if you're just going out and you're hiring a car or leasing a piece of equipment. So you're sort of paying rent or installments to cover the depreciation. So depreciation is where the cost the market value is lowering on here. And you're also paying interest to cover the capital cost of this. Now, assets are defined as anything of monetary value that is owned by a firm. So anything that has any physical money value that you have within your firm will be known as an asset. So an asset within the centre that you're at now. So it will be all the equipment that you've got there. It'll be the beds. It'll be any specialist things that you might use. It's the actual building itself as well. So anything that's got monetary value. So in total, we've looked at the principles of budget management. We looked at the systems used to manage finances, sources of funds, and then the factors affecting funding allocation. So are you okay with the overall on this learning outcome 4?
Yeah, I'll go back over it later.
Brilliant.
I weren't really paying attention.
To be honest, it's one of those that is good to go back over because it's all got so much terminology in it, and it's nice to put those terms within your assignment too.
Yeah, it's obviously it's a big thing, isn't it? Like money management and stuff. It's the world evolves around money, unfortunately.
Exactly.
So it's massive, isn't it?
So I'm gonna do this.